Okay, so with that, let's dive into backs. As always, I love to start with the bones. The back bones are about as complex as the front bones in that there's like three of them. So, what do we got? Your spine's a really important bone. It just kind of looks like that. At the bottom, it's your coccyx. It's your tailbone. It's just got a funny name. And it's very important, so I'm going to make sure. I think it's spelled coccyx, right? Very important bone. Then you got your rib cage, of course, right? And there's a scapula up here. And those are your big bones for your back, right? Very simple. And of course, your hip. Your hip's going to be involved. I put the coccyx too low. Sorry, it's right here. It's at the bottom of your pelvis. Right. That's the bones of the back. And I'm just going to quickly go over the anatomy here before we get into the fun part. Naming it all. Right. Okay, we don't actually need coccyx. I just drew it up because I thought it was funny. We got our bones. I want you to say it with me in your head. What are these bones? What's this one? Say it first. It says scapula. You should just know the name because then it's, easy to talk to other artists about your scaps off. Like, oh, okay. What's this one here? That's your humerus. Right, what's this? If you can't get this one, I'm sorry. You didn't pay attention in school. It's your rib cage. Someone didn't love you if you don't know what this is called, okay? You need to go sue somebody right now. This is a spine. That's your pelvis. Or your hip, whatever you want to call it, okay? Pretty straightforward, like I said. The back, the bones, not complicated. Cool. So, how do all these muscles fit together? Well, the thing about the back is it has an interesting, let's just say, it looks really complicated when you first look at it. Like you see those, guys doing big spreads of their backs. You're like, okay, that's above my pay grade. But it's actually, the back is much simpler than you think it is. There's really only about 4 or 5 major areas, and they're not actually that complicated in how they move. And you're like, oh, yeah, they are. It's like, no, they're not. I'll show you in a sec. Watch this. So, we don't need that. Just lighten this. We don't need these labels anymore because we're moving on. We don't define ourselves by our labels because we're all about growth here, right? The first big section and muscle is your traps, okay? Are you light? Oh, I see, okay. We're gonna call that one the traps, right? And this one, and let's do the connective tissue too. So remember I was babbling about fascia before I hit record? Well, this is where this is important. And also the tendons. Your traps connect down this way along the spine. And they kind of come to about mid-arm. And it's almost like there's 2 sections to them. Because what happens is there's this section up here off the neck that comes down like this and connects across the scapula. And then it kind of butterflies down. And you'll see that this shape here, and we'll see this when we go into the backs, takes on a lot of different shapes. What's happening is it's here on the scapula, right? That's where it's connecting. Then it comes down and connects to the spine, right? So there's kind of like 2 sections to it. And it will generally have this kind of shape to it, right? Some call it like a butterfly. It takes on a lot of forms. You just need to know that's there. It's a very, very big muscle. Does a lot of cool stuff. It's like when you bring your shoulders up to your ears, that's your trap. Your trap's what's doing that. So there's your traps. And there's also, when you do your drawing, you'll notice there's usually like a little diamond shape here around the spine. Little trappy diamond. We'll just call that the trap diamond. I don't think it's not actually called that, but I'm going to call it that now. And I expect all of you to call it that too. So that's your first major section, right? Your traps. Trap diamond, right? Tell your friends. Okay, next big one. Biggest, the next section here is, of course, your delts, your shoulders. Section 2. And these ones, as we went over this a little bit. You remember there was like the 3 heads, right? So from the back, you're going to see right here. So there's these. And we're going to color these in. Don't worry, so you know where they are. But this is your other section, delts to shoulders, right? If you don't want to use fancy, you want to use the street name, it's the shoulders. You know, when you're out in the alleys dealing drugs and you're going to talk about those sides of your arms, you don't say your delts, say your shoulders, and then you commit crimes, okay? The street name. Right, I'll label these even more so it's like super clear. Section 1, Section 2, and then Section 3. I'm going to use green for this one because I like green. I'm feeling it. It's a nice big green. And this is your lats. And this is the big money muscle on your back. They take up like half your back. They're friggin' huge. As you remember, actually I shouldn't use green because that's your connective tissue. Oh no. Oh no. Let's go purple. That's the royal color, right? And since lats are so important, we want a nice regal color because I messed up and used green, which was supposed to be our connective tissue, right? So your lats, they connect along here. And this is where I was mumbling about fascia, is because this lower section, you'll see in a sec, is all like this connective tissue. And that'll be important when you look at the references. So you can remember, because you got big brains, I know you're all smart, that the lats connect along the humerus on the inside, and then they swoop down like this, and they have this big shape like that. Right? And they kind of tuck under here a little bit. Usually the traps will kind of sit on top of the lats, but they squish right here a little bit. This part really varies person to person. Like, I want to emphasize when you're doing muscles that nobody is the exact same. They have they insert differently. They have different shapes, they have different sizes and thicknesses and all kinds of weird stuff. Each know the general areas, and then when you look at somebody, you want to draw somebody, you'll have like a really strong idea of like what should be happening. So you just want to you want to know. That's a lat, right? And then you'll often see when you do lats that it feels like it comes down and stops and then does this other section here. This is not a new muscle. It's just fascia, which is like it's like connective tissue, it's like a sheet of connective tissue. It's not technically muscle, but it will look like muscle under the skin. But sometimes when you look at people, you see this kind of like rigidity down in this area. Like, what is all that? And it's because it's like this big sheet of connective tissue, right? So don't get too freaked out by that. Just know there's kind of this thing here, right? And I looked it up. You might have heard me mumbling about it before I started recording. It was the thoracolumbar fascia. Ooh. $10 word, right? Someone go win some Jeopardy with that one. Okay. And then our fourth one, and you all would have heard me refer to this as the mess in a prior video. Now we're going to decipher the mess. That's, we'll call it the mess here, but the mess is actually 3 things, right? So this is in here. This is for the mess. What there is, and that's not going to work, so we're going to zoom in here. There's this piece here, or the bottom one here. Let's use different colors, right? Actually, I realize calling it the mess is going to just make a mess in your guys' heads. So the first one here is actually your teres major, right? Mess piece 1. Then let's grab pink. This one is your teres minor. And then finally, let's use brown. This is another piece of fascia. It's called the infraspinatus. Right? Okay. So this one's right in here. And then I need some pink, and then this one's right in here. So boop. This was 5. This one was 6. And I know I said there were 4. And that's because this can really function on a lot of drawings as just one unit. When you think about the back, unless someone's like really trying to get big, you won't really see these defined on most backs. You really, really won't. So unless someone's doing their pull-ups and they're hitting the gym 3 days a week, this is really just one unit, right? But again, if you want to do like, the Hulk or something, you're going to have to know about the breakdown, right, of the mess. And then just to connect this to what we've talked about before, I'll use black here. There is bone here, This is the top of your hip. This is your iliac crest, right? You know, that big chunk of bone you can feel on the side of your body there, right? And then as we talked about before, so it's iliac. Let me label that, and then right here, you're like, what is this? That is the obliques. Remember we talked about that during the core? This is your obliques. All right, obs. And then right, let's see, what have I not used yet? I've used all the colors. I'm out of colors. We'll just label it, right? So then you got your butt here, right? Your butt runs this way muscular-wise. Like, you know, you flex your butt, it comes in this way, right? So down here's your glute. There's a muscle here. I don't know if you want to do like a whole thing on the butt. You probably could do a butt lecture. I know you guys, you psychos enjoyed the breast one, so maybe I'll do a butt lecture. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want a butt lecture. And then, of course, this is your arm up here. This is your tricep, just so you have a frame of reference. Who doesn't want to learn about butts, right? Okay, let's color these in so you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, your trippy traps, right? Traps. Delts. Shoulder for the streets, right? You're like, dude, enough with the muscles. Can we show it? Like, how do I draw this? And I'll be like, that's why we're here, man. It's like, why are you getting all aggro on me? God. Because there's a point to this. Because I want you to know these pieces. You look at the back, you're like, yeah, okay, cool. Okay. And just to emphasize this, your sections, I'm gonna make this light. There is section 1. Okay. 1, section 2, section 3, and section 4. Right? These are the major groups of the back, and I see the chat going, they want a booty lecture. We'll talk about that like adults in a different chat. You know, I'm not opposed to it. If you guys want to delay the next lecture, which is we went over digital stuff and how to do all the digital wizard tricks. If you want to add an extra advanced anatomy class on just booty, I'm sure you guys can convince me. So with that, that's the major pieces of the back. Do we have any questions before I dive into showing you how these work in some weird positions? Give you all a sec. I'll take a nice deep breath of fresh earth air. Oh yeah. No questions? I shouldn't think those. I shouldn't think so. It's not that complicated, right? So let's just, a big mess of numbers, isn't it? So let's just, ooh. Here. So let's, goody booty. This is one. Okay. Just organizing some layers here as we move on to the next one. Okay. Let's have shop there because I want these nearby as I go through so you have the references because we want you to learn. Right? Oh, wow. That's messed up. Scooting. Just gonna delete this. I'm sure you guys know what's down there. Here we go. All right. Which part did you say does not show up much again unless you get injected? That'd be section 4. Right? So you can see on the little fella here, there's 3 muscles I've pointed out. And then on this one, there's only 4. And let's look. Oh, actually, you know what I'll do first? I'm going to go over the refs first, and then I'll show you the weird positions. So you can see it on a real human body, right? So let's do that first. You're right. That's a much smarter way to go about this. Good call. Okay. So here's ref. Let's start here. Nice simple back. So here's a guy who's clearly trying to get as jacked as humanly possible. Doing a great job of it. My goodness. What the heck, bud? Did you just not wear shirts because you can't? But that's why we picked this. This is a good reference. I just wanted to get a guy that was clearly running gear so you can see all the muscles. So, let me turn this up. You can see right here that little diamond I was talking about. See that? There's like this little bump on the spine here. So when you want to get really fancy with your anatomy, do that spine bump. I think it's the 7th piece of your spine, your vertebra. I think it's called C7. It's a little bone that pops up there. But here's that spine, or sorry, that trap diamond, right? Okay. Here's that ship I was talking about. See that? There's that first section of the trap. And it kind of does another one right here, right? You can see how there's just sort of like this sort of 2-piece to it. Technically, it's all the same muscle. That's just, but in the same way, you know, you say, oh, it's your bicep. But your bicep's actually 2 heads. So we just call this whole region the trap, right? It's your diamond. And there it is. Beautiful, right? There's his. Yeah, you'll see some folks incorrectly call this a rhomboid. That's not the case. The rhomboids are actually underneath. You can't see them. They're like under all this. They're here, but you can't see them. This is just the lower trap. And you can see here on the big boy the 3 pieces, right? So what did we used? Brown, pink, and yellow. So scoot this over. So right here is our teres major. Right, and then we have right here is the teres minor. It's ever so slightly visible. And then the infraspinatus. Right, all this is his big old, there's his rear delt. There's his medial delt. Right, it's all clicking, nothing crazy. And you can see here how I was talking about, there's like, this looks like 2 sections. This is just that fascia thing I was talking about. There are actually, I should have mentioned this, there's some muscles here that run along the spine. They're called the spinal erectors. You can see them on some people, but usually that's only for like, again, really big people. I remembered it when I saw the big guy here, where there's like kind of this bump thing going on. That's on guys that are really working their backs. They'll get these like 2 big pythons running down their back like this with the spinal erectors. But on most people, most human beings, you don't see these because the lats are just over top of it. But you should be aware of that. Anyway, so here's his lat, right? And I'm going to put a little, our little connective tissue line there, right? Because this is now fascia. It's like the lat diamond, right? And then like the spinal erectors. And let me color these in so you can see them. His traps are, see, he has a good example here. His traps are actually, they are kind of lopsided, eh? See that? See how this one's over fatter? Oh, it's because he's shrugging the shoulder in for the shot. That's why. But you see that? See how like this part is thinner than this part? Because he's pulling his shoulder in. And this goes to the part of Wonder Woman hugging the sword. That's what's happening. That's what she's doing, is she's taking her trippy traps and squeezing them in to hold that sword, theoretically, which sounds like it's very tiring, honestly. It does not sound fun, gal. Luckily, movies are not real, right? You know what I'm saying? But you see that? So far, so good. Everyone's like, okay, yeah, I see the muscles. Right, just plopping them in. Boop, boop, boop. And I should point out, this is scapula. This is scapula. Right here is his iliac crest. Right, that's bone. And then right up here, this is the obliques, right? Let's color in. I know you guys like that. I like it too. It looks great, right? So, coloring, coloring, coloring. Coloring, coloring, coloring. I know what you're thinking. What happens when someone's not jacked to the tits? That's a great question. Let's get into that. I actually found the least muscularly impressive woman I could find to show you what happens when you're going to draw a not jacked back. Man, this guy is freaking huge. This is nuts. Make sure I did that right. Yeah, he's so big that his teres major is actually popping over his lats. So you can see here. You see how this is coming over like that. Normally the lat will kind of hug over top like this. But this guy is so popping that this thing is just pooling over. It's nuts. And yes, the features soften greatly. So I'll show you that. I'm just going to color this in because it's a great way to see where stuff is. Right? I like it. I assume you guys like it, right? So there's that. Oh. Oh no, that's the wrong layer. He's lost it. He's gone off. There we go. Okay. Okay, so there's the major back muscles on a guy who's got way too much time spent on his hands in the gym. But, you know, it's a good thing to do. Working out's awesome. Cool. There's that fella. We'll put him to the side as a reference of someone accomplishing massive back. And let's look at someone who does not do this. I have both this petite fella or this petite woman. You can see now. Take a second to look at it. And do you see some of the forms there? Are they kind of like, you see how they're kind of like coming out? Or are they still a little elusive to you? Is it starting to make sense when you see it back? Okay, so let's lighten her and let's start. So, and I'll make this a little lighter. So, to your question of what happens when you soften them, the muscles just are thinner, right? That's all it is. So, like, if you look on this fellow over here on the right, his muscles have a lot of body to them as they sit along the frame, right? Like, you know, if this is a side view of his scapula, you know, his muscles are just, there's a lot of distance between the surface of his muscle and his bone, and so there's a lot of bulge to it. But in the case of this woman here, the muscles aren't that big, so they just kind of sit over top, right? There's just much less distance and thickness to the muscle, and so the muscles are still there, all the connective tissue is still there, it's just thinner. And so you'll see some of the bone underneath influence the muscles. Like, for instance, if you get someone who doesn't have much muscle mass at all, you'll see the rib cage bulging through the lat. And you're like, what, do they not have any muscles there? They do have a lat. Of course they do. Their arms move. But you'll see the influence of the bone on the muscle more, right? That's what's happening in that case. Because, like, if I turn this way up, you can see there's like these slight little delineations, right? That's because the rib cage is creating a little bit of a ripple to that lat sitting over the body, right? The lat's still there. This is still the lat, back muscle, but this here on this side is ribs, right? You understand that? Does that make sense now? Answer your question? Yeah, does that answer your question, Ignis? I'm gonna wait for you. I'm gonna wait for that answer. Awesome. Okay, so The muscles and their positions don't change. They're just smaller and you see more of the underlying structure. So because she's not spending all her time in the gym consuming and like entire animals for protein and hogging the pull down machine, you can see the forms of her scapulas here, right? Like you can see them influencing the muscle. All of the muscles are still there. They're just nowhere near as defined. So like her trap, you can see ever so slightly her trap diamond is still here. It's very gentle. And something else to keep in mind when you do women's bodies is they tend to have higher fat content in their tissues, which softens a lot of it, right? Especially when they're not very muscularly developed. You get a very soft, it's very implied what's going on, right? And so like if you were to, this is a little bit of a tangent, but if you were like do the lines on this girl, like, you know, I'm going to sketch this out and draw lines. Right. Where did I draw this? I drew it right on her. Okay, we know. Whoops, I drew the diamond on the wrong layer. That's a real classic digital mistake. I did the wrong layer. Oops. So, like for instance, if you're doing lines here, right? Because that's probably where you're going. Like, well, how do I draw the lines? Is whenever you draw a line anywhere, what you have to remember that a line, what it does is it just shows a delineation in form, right? That's what a line does. It tells you that there is a difference between areas, right? That's why they exist. So, like, let's say back to this rear view. Let's say this is a scap here, and this is the back, right? Does that make sense, right? This is a side view here. You're going to have this tissue sit on the scapula and then come in and then go down the back, right? So there's this kind of area here where there's a change in form, right? Even if it's only like an inch or not even an inch, but like a centimeter or a millimeter or something, this has gone in ever so slightly. And so when you're like, where do I put a line? Well, because there's a slight delineation, you put some lines here. That's how lines work. Same thing with like this back area. This back has this kind of divot to it where it goes in ever so slightly. And so a spot for a line would be like right there. Right? So you might do a back, and you actually sketch it out. Right? I do something like this, and then when I turn the layer off, that's how you do a back. And the thickness of the line changes how much we as viewers see a change in plane. Like if I do a very thick line, now it's like, oh, her scapula are really pronounced, right? If I do very thin lines, they're like just kind of there, right? They're just sort of implied. I want thinner, right? But we could just as easily come in and give her a very thick back, right? See how this kind of clicks, right? And I can come in and just start jacking her up, right? Remember, big fat trap, it comes down, and we just start putting the pieces in. Sketchy, sketchy, there's your trap diamond, right? See that? And you just kind of decide, you can make her big teres major if you want, right? You can start doing this all in. And it's all about just implying and choosing your line thickness to tell someone how crazy jacked someone is, right? Remember, there's like this little delineation here. And all of a sudden, this woman has a very thick-looking back. See that? Even though reference, it doesn't look anything like her. So, that aside, to the side to show you the potential that her back has if she would just go to the gym more. Do you guys want me to go over the muscle positions on her back, or does that help you understand smaller bodies? Or let's say normal bodies compared to the guy who has the Hulk body. Okay, I'll slap him in. Just so you have the reference. Okay, so. Okay, let's get her up around there. Okay, so there's your trap diamond, right? I'll make that a little clearer for you. Remember, the trap comes down here, it does a little thingy like this, and it comes down about mid-back. Well, not mid, like, right? These two sections. Runs along the top of the scapula, There she is. Right? And the scaps are, it's been very pronounced on her. The forms are right there. Right? The scapula is on the back. You remember that from when we did the bones? There's your scapula. They're like that. And now this goes back to the point I made earlier. When you're doing people that aren't as big, you don't really need the mass, right? This isn't necessary on her. Like, you can kind of go, well, there's an infraspinatus here and a teres minor and a teres major, but you don't see them because hers are not huge. They're just kind of thin layers of muscle laying over the bone, right? So I would suggest when you're doing this, you know, you have your shoulder. So we're like this, right? She's got very thin shoulders, right? They're not big at all. Just like that. And so when you do your mass, just remember your lat connects to the top of the humerus, comes down, right? Top of the humerus comes down, right to the butt. You can kind of see it on her, right? You see that slight, so subtle on her, but you can see it when you squint your eyes. See that kind of, that little area right here? Hopefully it comes through the camera. That's that bottom of the lat there, right? Yeah. So, and that goes into that part of subtlety, because when you do the lines, when you draw it, you can do a very subtle line there. You can just kind of, like the lightest of lines, right? If you want to. But be careful with that, because the more lines you add, the more you suggest there's plane changes, and the more muscular someone looks, the less feminine they tend to look. So if you want to do like a very feminine woman, you wouldn't do a lot of muscles on her. Keep it very soft. You might not even do anything beyond the scapula, right? Because on most women, when they're like, you know, at lower body fat percentages, you won't really see a lot of these plane changes. Like I said, you'll just kind of see a scap and the middle of the spine. And that's pretty much it, right? Like kind of like this little sad face. Almost. The girl back sad face. Back to the point. You see here how this is just sort of, you don't do it all. You just kind of do an area, right? It's just in there, its own thing. It's all you really need, right? And remember, on thinner people, not thinner, but on less muscularly defined people, that this region is going to be very influenced by the scapula shape underneath it. It's going to press up through all of these muscles, and you'll see a lot of its form. But the muscles are still there, right? The trap is still connected to the scap. The deltoid is still connected to the scap. All of this stuff, like the mess, is all connected to the scapula, right? It's all still there. Right? Throw those in for you. Because we don't love color. And then we'll dive into some weird positions. Everyone feeling good so far? All making more sense. We're feeling good about backs. We're all getting our money's worth, our time worth, our value. We feel like better people. Feel confident and loved and accepted and all kinds of great stuff. Yeah, it's all about that practice, right? Here. Cool. Okay. Let's get weird with it. That one's that layer, that one's that layer. Don't need you. Don't need you. Let's do these ones here. So let's go over some more. And let's actually, I'm not going to draw on top of them. I got an idea here. I'm going to just draw next to them so you can see what an actual sketch process looks like. I think we could probably stand to do that more. How dare you? Because we're all here to learn to draw, right? Delete. Why is it? Oh. Instead of actually doing anything, you're just going to hear me guys complain about Photoshop, even though I should just go and switch to CSP already. But who doesn't have fun listening to me complain, right? It's like, complaining's great. So. Let's put that there so you can see all of it. Okay. To references, you got, again, two choices when you want to learn how to practice. Either you do like a light trace, right? Do a light trace. And you can bring it over and sketch on top of it. You can draw right over top of it. Whatever's comfortable for learning. Tracing is not wrong. I actually highly encourage tracing as a learning tool. Or you just try and sketch it out. So, you know, if we were trying to sketch it out, you'd kind of go, because here's the thing, if you, before you sketch things out, if you don't understand how the lines are supposed to feel, you're gonna make mistakes, right? So you can either do your sketch and then compare it to the reference, you know, you can layer it over top, or you can trace it as little as possible and then try and add the layers on top. There's no wrong way to do it. You're just trying to learn, find what works for you, and then just do that, right? Because it's important that you find this process as enjoyable as possible, because you're gonna have to do all this a lot, right? So make sure it's as fun as you can make it. So we'll do it, right? So there's no wrong way to learn. It's whatever's comfy for you. So let's I'll do a hybrid one here where we're just gonna go, okay, his rib cage is here, right? And we know his spine does this. This is kind of a little in-between one where we're gonna grab the major forms of it and then sculpt it ourselves. And we can see here, there's his scapula and his humerus is right there, right? Scap, humerus. And I guess we'll put the skull on there. Right, so we take this, go over here. Okay, we got the form. That's not bad. That's not bad, right? So then we have our general bone forms, and now we're going to add stuff on top, right? So the trap. We take a look at our reference. Let's see. So we know this is about the bottom of our scapula, arms. That should kind of come in right around there. Okay, so, yep. There's our trap. And see that, he's got that big butterfly right there? His is very pronounced. But there's that trap diamond too. So the trap diamond comes down, big, comes along the scap, big. Okay, there's that. Right, so this is your process. And I will say that you don't have to actually draw the muscles out every time, right? So if you were to sketch this, which I guess is the real goal here, right? Let me just erase what I'm doing. I just want to sketch. You're just going to kind of go, okay, there's a trap here. It's bunching up because I have, right? And you just kind of sketch it out, right? You know, the trap comes down, big trap. There's the fascia, big trap. He's kind of big, so we want this section here, arms, right? You see that? How you can kind of, you just sort of block it out, but don't get too precious with it, right? That's always one of my things, is don't get too precious. Why is this stuck open? Thank you. Oh, because I'm hitting the wrong hotkey. My hand shifted over. You guys use hotkeys? My hand had shifted over one set of keys, so I was hitting all of the wrong buttons, trying to hit the right buttons. Do you guys ever do that? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So in this process, right, we have our rough sketch, right? And these will get looser and looser as you go. Try to be a little defined here. But you'll turn it down and you just do your lines, right? Give you guys the real process here. Okay, time to do my actual lines. I'll do it in red. So, okay, here's the top of his head, right? And this is where you have to pick where you want to add delineation. Even though I put all these muscles in, I could say he's got more body fat. And not go crazy in this area, right? You see what I mean? You don't have to pick all of the areas to show off, right? So when I like turn this off, it's not bad, right? And you can, if you want, you can go in and put in all the heads here, right? You see he's got, see how the trap sits underneath here? So we know there's one over top, right? And you just keep refining it until you're happy with it, right? When you get lost, go look it up. You make them thinner, you make them thicker. It's your art, man. All right, and then we got this big thing here. His bicep should be bigger. Don't be like, this happens a lot, but don't be afraid to play with your lines and find the forms you want. Because sometimes you'll sketch things out and go, oh, that's kind of mid. And you can see here, actually, I didn't put the lat out far enough. Okay, well, let's correct that. We know the latch connected to the humerus, so it should be more like here, right? It's got a big back. You know, I made a little mistake there. You see here's that teres major coming up underneath. I could probably like make that a little more, right? And we just keep working it till we like where it is, right? And I could also decide all of a sudden, okay, I'm making all these lines, whatever. You just come in and just get rid of them all, right? There's no rules. You can do whatever you want, right? That's some ideas for the sketching, right? I can also decide, okay, maybe this is getting too cluttered, right? Okay, I can kind of see kind of taking shape. I don't really like it. Okay, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. Let's make him thin, right? Go back to your skeleton and just decide, okay, let's just make him a little tiny dude, right? Little thin guy. Comes in, but all the rules are still the same. Like his teres major is still going to come underneath here. You won't see it as much. The lat's still going to come up like that, right? See what I mean? Right, when we turn off that, this only have a lighter back. So do you see that difference? I'm trying to show you guys how you just sort of decide how much you're going to show based on the art you want to make. Does this give you that clarity? I'm trying to give you that. That's what I'm trying to hand you. Did I hand it to you properly? Did you get it? You just know the puzzle pieces and then just decide on how big they are and how they talk to each other. Okay, good. That was one of the more weird shapes. Oh, you wanted to go over bringing the scaps in. Okay. Well, let's do here. This is a good one for Galga though. Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to take half of this. It's going to be sick. It's so sick. I just cut her in half. And one side's going to be really light. One side's going to be much more visible. I'm going to show you how you can draw it versus the pieces. I think this will be a good place to wrap up back talk. Back talk. It's funny. I made it funny. It's so funny. All right, so let's line up the pieces real quick. This lady, right, here's our trap. Right, remember it comes along the scap. It has that kind of shapey shape. Right, her Hers is, you can see there's much more clarity to the muscles, but they're not that big still, right? So I'm talking about this area, right? You can kind of see the form a little bit, but she's still not super jacked, right? As you can see, there's a mid head here, right? Here's that head. You can see all three heads of her deltoid. A little high there. But it's not huge, right? You see what I mean when I'm talking about like the size, thickness of the muscles, how they vary, how everybody's a little different. So in that way, you can make a lot of quote unquote mistakes, but still get a lot of the ideas right. Because you're kind of drawn the way you want to draw it. Right, so here's her lat. Down, there's that kind of fascia line. Her back is shredded. You can like see the striations of the muscles. Striations are like the so when you have muscles, they group into like little localized bands, like, and when someone's really lean, you can see the bands of the major muscle group, because every muscle, like muscle group, usually has little smaller muscles that comprise the whole thing. In the same way, there's 3 heads to a tricep or 2 to a bicep. This girl is so shredded, you can see all these lines on her traps, which are nuts. Wow, that's impressive. And sometimes you're going to see here where you're like, where the insertions are different, because it looks like her teres major comes down, and then she's got quite a large. Yeah, you see there's the divot there, so that looks like that's probably her. That's probably the minor right there. Yeah, okay, that looks about right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, right, comes along. Yeah, big. She's shredded. Okay. Cool. This is actually a great example of how bodies can be so very different. You don't have to get just don't beat yourself up about like I don't understand what's going on. You need to understand that people have very, very different bodies, but they all follow the same general structure, right? Someone's like, for instance, if someone moves their body in a certain way, their muscles are going to grow in different ways, and so they might have really big shoulders, but like a really small teres major, right? And you're like, well, in the example that I saw in the lecture, like teres majors should be bigger than this. Well, that's not necessarily true, because how people move their bodies will dictate how big the muscles are in relation to other muscles, right? And so don't get too attached to how big things should be based on the references you practiced. What I always like to be a big proponent of is just learn the general pieces, right? So there's a spine, there's a rib cage, there's a scapula, there's a humerus. Know the major muscles, right? There's these 4 areas. There's 6 muscle groups. And as long as you understand how those general pieces tend to exist, when you look at a back, you can kind of decipher where things are and what they should be doing, right? That's all you need, because between what? That's 4 bones, 6 muscles, it's 10 pieces. It's 10 pieces. And as long as you understand how those generally fit together, when you do your references, you can pull from it, or even when you want to draw freehand, you know the general pieces you have to play with. And that's why I picked this girl's back, because I was like, I'm actually a little like, oh, she's got her scapula's got a lot going on there. So I thought this would be a great example to kind of show how these different muscles can kind of talk to each other while still telling the same story. If that makes sense. Or they can kind of talk a little differently, but it's like it's all still there. Right? And I'll show you what I mean on this left side, which is what I wanted to get to. Which is why I did this little cool half-half thing. Right? Here. Here's we want to sketch this out, right? So we're just doing a sketch. Okay, there's the neck, rib cage, spine, blah, 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 right? There's an arm here. We're just sketching. We're sketching. Sketchy, 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 right? That's how you would sketch, too. You just kind of, okay, there's a shoulder here. There's this piece here, this piece, right? The 1, believe I made this 2. Or actually, over here, right? That's 2. There's a 4. There's a 3, right? So there's your general areas. Because you know these pieces, you know that the lat goes from the spine up to the humerus, right? Because you know your general pieces, you know that on this area, there's going to be one on the bottom that comes up to the humerus. I should use a different color, but there's the bottom one here, right? This one. It comes from the scapula up to the humerus. So you know it's going to actually, I should do it more like this, right? Right, do you see what I'm talking about? Is this making sense? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? About learning just the general shapes and connections, and then you can just sort of throw it on the paper? I saw some typing, then I saw some typing stop. Was someone going to say something? Muscles with a message, right? But that's a good way to put it. Oh, okay. Okay, well that pretty much is what I want to say on backs. Does that answer the questions you guys had about drawing backs? I'll go over the overlap real quick. Generally, you want to start with, I numbered these in this way. In general, you want to start with your traps, right? Because, here, I'll turn these down and sketch over. Okay. Use the red here. So, generally, the traps are a good place to start because they sit on top of the scapula, right? And they, like, you'll see there's usually like this top of the shoulder here will kind of be in between the trap, right? You'll kind of see this sort of shape often where there's an intersection here. So I personally like to start with the trap. Is on most people it'll kind of, I think actually, let's look at that Jack guy real quick. Where's Jackie? Right? Yeah, you can kind of see it on him. What about is this one show it? Here's our big boy. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So he's got an example of this. See how the trap kind of sits in between these heads of the deltoid, right? Lay these out because here's that front one, here's that middle one, and here's the big rear one that comes up in the back, right? So that's why I think I like to start with the trap mentally and then do the shoulders. Just because it's just the way, you know, you kind of, I don't know. A lot of folks, it'll be more visible. That'll be a personal preference. You can start with either one. But back to our ref here. So starting with the trap. Generally, this is your favorite layer. Or not favorite, this is the one I like to start with, right? You just put it on top like that. Okay, call that layer 1 if you want. And then you want to do your shoulder, right? And the general shape is kind of like that, right? And these again, these don't really layer. As you saw, there's like a slight maybe suggestion of layering between the front deltoid and the middle deltoid, but that's kind of pushing it, right? You can make an argument. Then you want to do your lat, right? Because on most people, the top of this lat here, right here, this piece, is going to sit over the mess, right? So then you want to do your lat as your piece number 3. And then you got this section here, which on most people is not going to be super pronounced, but on some people it's going to be very pronounced. And That's why I picked this fella here, because he shows how this piece, I have like, oh my god, everything's on. He shows how this piece here, let's use black. This one is actually kind of pushing out over the lat. Even though the lat, this one, tends to actually sit over top, right? But because this muscle is so big and pronounced on this fella, they're fighting for space, right? They're kind of fighting for real estate. And so what's happening is this lat is kind of coming up underneath to connect to his arm. This thing is shoving it. It's shoving it out of the way, right? Does that make sense? The overlapping? You're like, okay, I got it now. I got it, right? The clickety-clacking. Any other questions on backs? Are we feeling good? Ready to go do some references? Yeah, see how you go do your references. You find weird poses, and do your studies. That's where you are now. Like this one, for instance, right? You're like, what is this? Any other questions? Or are we good? Do we feel like we learned something? That's always my question for you. Did we learn something? Are we feeling good about backs? Good. Good. So with that, that'll conclude the back lecture. If y'all got any submissions you want to make, now's the time.